What would you do with 64 quilt blocks? Hi, today I'd like to introduce you to the bow tie quilt block. If you're already familiar with this block, please give me a chance to reintroduce you. This quilt block can be used to make baby quilts, heritage quilts, and contemporary quilts. It all depends on the fabric you're using and your layout. There are many ways to lay out this block to make a quilt. I have several here and I'd like you to comment and let me know which one is your favorite. And if you had 64 quilt blocks, how would you lay them out? This is the first layout where all your bows are parallel to each other.
In the second layout, the top row of the bows are parallel to each other, leaning to the left. And then the second row, the bows are parallel to each other to the right. And you just keep repeating this pattern. In the third layout, you turn the bows so that they make circles, and the secondary pattern makes chunky X's. This is layout 3 with a black background. This is layout 3 with a scrappy look. This is layout 4 with a scrappy look. This is layout 1 where all the bows are parallel, but in this look they're all scrappy. In this layout you have a central focal point and all of the bows radiate outward from the center. To make the bows in this video, you're going to need 4-inch blocks. Your bows will be 4 inches and your background will be 4 inches. So I cut my fabric into 4-inch strips and then I cut them down to 4-inch blocks. For the little part of your bow that's like the tie of the bow, you're going to need 2-inch squares. So they'll be the same fabric as you want to use for your bows. So I can't tell you exactly how many blocks you're going to get out of fat quarters if you're using fat quarters for this project, because my fat quarters, most of them were Free Spirit Tim Holtz collection, but they weren't all the same with the selvage. Some of them had like a 1/2-inch selvage and some of them had like 1 inch or more selvage, and once I cut that off, it cut down on how many blocks that I could get out of the fat quarter. So I am going to tell you need approximately 4 yards of material to make 64 of these blocks. If you're wanting to make 64 of these bow tie blocks, you're going to have to cut 128 4-inch blocks for your bows, 128 4-inch blocks for your background fabric, and 128 2-inch by 2-inch blocks for your center of your bow ties. These bow tie blocks are an easy block to do. There's just a 4 patch and then you do a stitch and flip on your background fabric to make the center of the bow ties. If you haven't done a stitch and flip before, it's really easy. You just take these 2-inch blocks and you draw a line across the back of them diagonally, and I just use a pencil to do this. Whatever background fabric that you're using, you're going to put this 2-inch block in one of the corners and you're actually going to sew on the line that you drew. I don't normally draw a line on all these squares. I mean, that would be 128 lines that you're drawing. I'm a little impatient for that, so I've found a shortcut, which most quilters know. There's a piece of tape that you can put on your sewing machine to do the line up for these lines, so you actually don't have to draw them. The tape that I'm talking about for your sewing machine to do these 2-inch squares, I just used washi tape. I mean, if you went to a quilt shop, they would sell you specific tape, but really, I just use washi tape. I line the washi tape up with the needle, the edge with the needle, and then I bring it straight down the front of the sewing machine. And then when you sew, you line up the point of your 2-inch square with the sewing machine needle and the other point that's diagonally across with the edge of the tape, and then you just sew, keeping that point of the 2-inch square that's closest to you lined up with the edge of the tape. The first step in putting this block together is starting with sewing your 2-inch squares to your background fabric, and it's going to be right sides together, and you really want to be organized with this. If you have everything set up at your sewing machine, you can chain piece these, and it's really a quick block to get done. Once you have your 2-inch blocks sewed onto your background fabric, you're going to give them a good ironing. You just want to flip the fabric over and iron it down, and you want to make sure the edges of the 2-inch block match up with the edges of your 4-inch block. The next step is to cut this extra fabric underneath away, and you can use scissors to do this, or you can use a rotary cutter. I kind of like to use my rotary cutter because I get a straighter line. After I cut away the extra fabric, I usually finger press the seam open, and then I take it to the iron and actually iron the seam open for these. Once your stitch and flips are trimmed and ironed, you're ready to put the block together, and it's real easy to put it. It's just a 4-square patch. First, you'll stitch the top 2 squares together and then the bottom 2 squares together. Once your top 2 blocks and your bottom 2 blocks are sewed together, you're going to want to press the seam allowance away from your background fabric, or you can finger press it or you can take it to the iron. Now you want to line up the center of your blocks, and the seam allowances should be pressed in opposite directions so this goes together nicely, and you're just going to sew the two together. Once you sew that center seam, you're going to want to press that seam open so that it stays nice and flat, and your block is pretty much done. The only thing left that I would suggest is to check the finished size of your block. The thing about quilting is doing one block is easy. Trying to get 50 to 100 ending up the same size can sometimes be difficult. So check your blocks, make sure they're the same size. If you have to trim them exactly to the same size so that all of your intersections match. Please let me know what your favorite layout is for this quilt and if you're considering making it. Thanks a lot. Please like, comment, and subscribe.